Hello and welcome to Coding with Jess, where you code along with me while I build a thing. So welcome back. If this is your first time watching Coding with Jess, welcome. But for many of you, hopefully this is part two of a maybe series, I don't know, where we dive into looking at LiveStore, which is a local first framework that's event sourced, and trying to integrate that with the Claude Agent SDK. It used to be called the Claude Code SDK, but Anthropic has recently broadened the name to indicate that their Agent SDK is actually useful for more things besides just code, which I think many of you probably have found that to be true if you've been playing with Claude Code. So the goal of this live stream, it's going to be 2 hours long. I'm going to take a 25-minute, I'm going to break it up into four 25-minute segments. So I'll work for about 25 minutes, Pomodoro style, stop for 5 minutes, take a quick break, and then jump back in. And the goal of the live stream is to test out uh, the Claude Agent SDK and how we might integrate that with a LiveStore app. I have a LiveStore app called WorkSquare that I've been using where I've built my own agentic environment that's built on top of LiveStore. And I want to try out using the Claude Agent SDK as the agentic loop within my WorkSquare, my LiveStore app that I'm already using. So this is a spike, which means that I'm writing spike or throwaway code to see what the integration might be like. That'll help me make some architectural decisions and ultimately decide whether we want to go with the Claude Agent SDK. There are other options besides that, so I might want to choose some of those and look at those at some point. All right, so let's jump right in. This is the GitHub repo. It is public. You can go check it out if you'd like to follow along and see the initial LiveStore app. Right now, the only thing that's there is Claude Agents, is a LiveStore app, which I'll show in just a second. And also, I put together this, let's see if I can pull it up, diagram last time about what we're building to make it a little bit more concrete. And as we were going through the docs, we talked about some of these trade-offs around what we could build. The architecture that I'm using with Work Squared is more similar to having a server that's running LiveStore and having individual clients that are running LiveStore. And then those servers, that server is the one that makes all of the LLM API calls. This is a really nice environment for multiplayer, as well as having agents that are sort of multiplayer within the system as well. And so there's their client information, or each one of the clients can connect to the sync server and get those events, and then the server can grab those events as well. We're going to go with like a simpler architecture for this spike because the complexity of this architecture is really about multiplayer, not really about the Claude Agents SDK. So we're not going to learn anything by leaning into this more complex architecture. So we'll go with this simpler architecture for today, which is basically where we'll have a single LiveStore client, or you could think of it as the server, but a single LiveStore client that's going to have the Claude Agent SDK running inside of it and is going to be accessing the LiveStore events through the Claude Agent SDK, through something that we found out last time, which is that there are these in-process MCP servers that Claude Agent SDK stands up. And so we'll get those stood up right now. Let's see. Look at one thing real quick. And one more thing here. All right. Great. So let's jump back into where we were just a second ago. Here we go. Okay, so we last time got the LiveStore app up and running, so let's go ahead and give that a start and see what that looks like. I'll go ahead and start out a Claude code because we'll be using that to help us out with things. Here is what our existing LiveStore app looks like. So we have a simple Kanban board where I can put a task 1, take out the trash. I can move those tasks through different statuses. I can also edit the task. Tasks have descriptions. And that's kind of it. Now, why did I build a Kanban board? The whole purpose of having an agentic loop within LiveStore is to give the agent the same set of events and queries that the human has in the application. So that would allow me to do things like say, can you create a to-do list for me for a cleanup project of my storeroom? And then have it actually come and create these cards on here. I'm already doing that in Work Squared, and it feels really cool to be able to have like a project manager agent sitting on top of your project board. We have other things in Work Squared besides project boards, but Kanban is one of them, and so it seemed like a good like liminal or minimal space that we could test out the agent. Right now, this is totally fake. I see you said I basically built the chat interface so that, or had Claude Code generate a chat interface so that we could try this whole thing out. This will get passed on to the Claude Agent SDK, and that's what we're going to work on today. All right, so let's go ahead and pull up the docs for this. Docs, Anthropic. Yeah, I think we've got our setup now to where we can kind of get started with the actual Claude Agents SDK. All right, let's see. API guide. Also, feel free if you're in watching, feel free to ask questions in the chat. I am watching the chat and we'll try to respond there. And maybe you can help me out when I get stuck with stuff. All right, where was the Claude Agents SDK? I guess. Here we go. Migrate to Claude Agent SDK. Here we go. Agent SDK. Cool. So let me point Claude at this. All right, let's think about this for a second. Open up what we do have so far. All right, so we have a LiveStore app that's pretty simple. React app using like vanilla CSS. There's a LiveStore provider that wraps our Kanban board. Then we also have a chat component. In that chat component, when you send messages, here's the handle send messages. When I first built Work Squared and was using like this single client model to send off AI messages, I just built put the entire agentic loop right here in the React component. And we can definitely do that for now. This is, the whole point is to test out the Claude Agent SDK, not to have like necessarily the best architected application. So we can basically, this is where the money event is gonna happen right here is handle send message. Let's see what else is going on down here. That's like the ability to submit the message by hitting return. There's showing all the messages. All right, cool. All right, so handle send messages is where we'll do this. Now, it's interesting, we will want to submit the message to the Claude Agent SDK and get the Claude Agent SDK looping. And right now, what we do to begin to kick everything off is we actually save that message to the LiveStore repository, to the LiveStore database. So we send off this event. Let's go look at the LiveStore events real quick so you can get a feeling for how LiveStore works here. So in LiveStore, you basically got events, tables, and materializers. And so the tables here that we have so far are the tasks table. This tasks table gives us the ability to create the cards and store them in specific columns and column positions and that kind of thing. Interesting that tasks has columns. Oh, right. These are not Kanban columns. These are actually the columns in the database table. Misreading that. So yeah, the task has columns. It also has a column. Each task has a specific column that it's in, default to the to-do. Imagine there's, let's see, down here in our events, let's see, we should have a schema. Updates or any. Don't love that. We'll get to that. Let's see, task created, task insert. It's going to insert a column. Okay, so we're not really typing these. Here we are. Okay, schema struct. Task moved. Yeah, it's just any schema string. So we could do a better job of typing our columns and other things that are happening here. Again, that's like an improvement that we would make at the LiveStore level. Not something that I'm particularly concerned about this time. It is definitely something that would make things better. It might matter in a few minutes, though, because what we're going to do is expose these events and expose these materializers. Wait, let me see. We've got materializers, make event state. What we don't have is any examples of queries here. So well, actually, I guess there would be some in the Kanban board. Let's go look at that. Query DB. Here we go. Here's a good example of a query. So get tasks by column, query the DB, get the table tasks where ordered by this label that fits in this particular label of the column. So yeah, we've got these different use query hooks to get different queries back. So when we expose the LiveStore events to the agentic loop, we'll expose them as um, MCP tools. And so we'll want to expose both the ability for the agent to actually create new events, which is going to like modify the thing, but also to be able to ask for information about what is present in LiveStore as it is. So that'll be a set of queries. All right, well, I think in chat.tsx in handle send message is where we would like to hand over to the Claude Agent SDK. Let's take a quick look at this. My plan is to let Claude Code write most of the code here. I'm not going to go and write it by hand, but let's look and see what this is going to look like, kind of remind ourselves of what it looked like last time. We had I think what was most helpful last time when we looked at this was there was a couple of examples that were pretty robust that I think it was under guides, maybe. Let me see. No, guides walks through like the individual features of the SDK. Messages examples not it. Let's see. For Python projects, breaking changes, that's Python. System prompt no longer default. The SDK no longer uses Claude Code system prompt by default. That's actually fantastic. Because we actually do want to, now that we're not writing code with the Claude Agent SDK. We're modifying a Kanban board. So having all the system prompt for Claude Code is pretty interesting. If you're ever curious about prompt writing, that's a good one to go look up and study. Why the rename? Where did I see those SDK examples before? They're not here in the overview. Maybe they actually are in the TypeScript SDK. Functions, types, tool input types, permission types, other types. See also. SDK overview. Oops. Let's try the guides real quick. Here's how streaming works. Here we go. Here's some implementation examples. All right, so if I remember correctly, we are going to have to use streaming right from the beginning. Streaming input is the preferred way, provides full access, handles session management, default and recommended. Well, it's recommended anyway, so we might as well just go ahead and go with it. All right, so here's the overall structure that we're looking at. This async generator here, generate messages, is going to yield every time there's a message and then format that as it comes back to the message. I guess this is the user's message. And then wait for conditions or user input. Follow up with an image. Oh, okay, this is actually simulating a set of messages that we're sending to Claude Agent SDK. So we'll send a user message first, and then we'll pause for 2 seconds. Then we'll send an image. Each of these have, there's what they're going to actually be sending. Analyze this code base for security issues. Review this architecture diagram. All right, so those are getting sent, and then we basically iterate over those messages. Here's the prompt, generate message. That must be, or generate messages. Oh, okay, gotcha. So this is, oh, all right. So this is the streaming example. So it's going to pick up this first message first, yielding this result. Then it's going to pause, yield another result. And so what we should see is this, as it's looping over the messages, it's actually going to send a message and then wait 2 seconds and then start executing immediately. And then send another message on top of that one. Here's the allowed tools thing we talked about last time. We're going to need to figure out exactly which tools we allow. We're not running on a file system, so I was even curious what it means to like expose something like grep. So that's going to be interesting. And then max turns 10. If message type equals result, then log the result. So we're going to get back a bunch of messages that are not result type. It'll be interesting to see what we want to do with those. Single message input. We're not going to use that. Let's look at permissions real quick. Can use tool callback. It's where it like asks for permission to use a tool. All right, well, I think I've seen enough that I want to just hand it over to Claude Code and have it write a very basic version of it. All right, so we're integrating this LiveStore app with the Claude Agents SDK. Please grab the TypeScript SDK and in chat.tsx, what was the name of that method? In the handle send message function, send those messages to the Claude Agent SDK and create messages from the agent in the chat channel so that we can see them. Here are the docs, and then let's give it the basic TypeScript SDK here. Copy page. And not sure the best way to do this. So give me a quick thoughts on the architecture here. We want to prioritize a simple integration to start and add complexity. Do use streaming to start. All right. Let's see how that goes. All right. So one thing I want to look at while Claude Agent or Claude Code is going off and building the simple integration here is what are the different types of messages that we're going to get back from Claude Agent SDK. So there's the typical messages that we know need to be sent back, but one of the things that I'm really curious about is how the tool calling messages come back, how they're structured, and what we would want to show in the UI here. So got our app here. We would show as like a standard text, message from the bot, the anything that is of that message type, I think is what the type was. But we probably also want to show kind of tool calls, streaming calls that are coming back, maybe even tool call results of, you've moved this thing to this column or moved this thing to this column or created a new task, all that kind of stuff. And that's basically, what Claude Code SDK does. Like it does a pretty good job of telling you what is happening. All right. Looking at the integration. So yeah, we'll look at that in just a second, but let's see what Claude Code is asking about and make sure that we get the architecture straight before I send it off, because it'll probably take it 3 or 4 minutes to finish this implementation. So the simple approach to recommended, use a session based with the SDK handling history. Store a session ID in the component state, session based with SDK history. So one set of calls to Claude Agent SDK comprises a session with a session ID so that it knows that the calls are continually mapped to that session. I guess that's what this is saying. We'll need to clarify that. On first message, call query. That makes sense with a continue flag. That gets you your session ID from the response. Okay, that makes sense. And then yeah, on subsequent messages, you'll continue. You'll give it the stored session ID. Right. So then we can like build up this. This is interesting. Okay. So in typical prompting, right, I would actually take the user messages, the previous user messages, and insert those into this messages array that I would then send off to the LLM with the new message that I just got, right? So in some ways, you're handing them it's a stateless thing, right? The LLM. So you're like handing the LLM back. Hey, here's the entire conversation, including all the tool calls and tool call results and all that kind of stuff that have happened so far. I just want you to know that so that you have that context in the context window when I send this new user message across. But in this world, we're like a layer of abstraction out from here, right? So the Claude Agent SDK is now managing that context. So we don't have to send all the previous messages, right? It already knows what the messages are and it's going to manage that somehow. Apparently, it's going to give us things like compaction, hopefully, and other things like that. So, I mean, I guess this is the value here. But the mental model is a little different than like dealing with a stateless LLM where you pass the subsequent or the previous messages. So let's let the SDK, yeah, it says it on the next line, what I just said. Let the SDK manage conversation history. You don't need to pass it. Yes, that's what I just deduced. Thank you, Claude Code. You read my mind. This is the sweet spot between too simple and too complex manual history management. Agreed. All right, so we'll do that to begin with. There are some new like memory management stuff that Anthropic released last week. I don't know how those play in with Claude Agent SDK, but presumably the Agent SDK is already using those. I'm guessing. Not sure. All right. And I guess I'll never know because it's going to be internal to the Claude Agent SDK. So where to put the SDK logic? Let's keep it in chat TSX. It agrees. Can extract it to a separate service or hook later. Totally agree. Message flow. User is going to send a message. We are going to put that in LiveStore. We'll call the SDK's query and iterate on the async generator. Yeah, iterate the async generator. Get an SDK assistant message, which we then commit to LiveStore. Handle the SDK result message for completion or errors and start with basic options. Add system prompt, allowed tools, etc. later as needed. API key via environment variable or options. Okay, cool. Just iterate the async generator fully. No streaming initially. Show the loading state while waiting. Sure, if you think that's the simplest thing, that's fine. All right, questions for me. Yes, we will want to give access to the Kanban board, but let's start with just simple chat and response. Persist the session ID to LiveStore or just keep it in memory. In memory is so we deliberately chose a couple of simplifications when we were building this application. One is we decided there would only be one Kanban board, and that one Kanban board would have all of the cards on it and one set of columns. Similarly, we decided that there would only be one chat thread. And so this is the chat thread for the entire project. I kind of think we should have the session ID stored in memory. Not stored in memory, stored in LiveStore that's associated with this conversation ID. That way you can do things like refresh and yeah, and bring up past conversations and continue them and that kind of stuff. So store it in LiveStore. Should there be tool restrictions? Yes. I was going to ask this exact same thing, but I'm not sure which tools should be allowed. Can you walk me through how to choose from Claude Agents SDK available tools? Like grep prob doesn't make sense. All right, let me see if it even has the docs for all the tools. We might need to give it the docs itself. I mean, I know it can do web search and find it, but it might be faster for us to just give it the URL. Let's see. This is custom tools. That's not actually what we want. I think that TypeScript SDK actually that I gave it has all the tools. Yeah, tool input types, tool output types. Great. All right. Okay, great question. Let me walk you through the built-in, give you a sense. All right, file operations, probably skip for now. Read, write, edit, glop, grep. Yep. Command execution, definitely skip. There's no bash. There's nothing like that. Web access is useful. I do love that the Claude Agent SDK includes the ability to do web access. Now, granted, like the Anthropic web access is not as good as OpenAI's web access in my experience, In fact, I frequently use Claude for almost everything, and then I'll jump to ChatGPT for anything that uses web search, which is a surprising number of things. And so cool that we get web search though. I should just say that that we don't have to build it ourselves, and presumably this will get better over time. Advanced skip for now. Launching subagents. How is task launching? Oh, to do is different. Okay, that's right. That's right. I remember reading about this distinction and being confused before. To do right is the internal to-do list that Claude Agent SDK can use to kind of like Scratchpad keep track of what it's executing on. And it's a pretty neat little tool. So we probably do want to enable this at some point. Task apparently is launching subagents, which is kind of surprising. We'll probably want to enable that at some point as well. MCP tools for model context protocol servers. Right, so mostly it's web access, task, to do right, planning mode control probably, MCP tools definitely. But for now, let's do an empty allowed tools array. We could try web search. Let's go with option 2. Web search would be handy. And then that also will give us the opportunity to like figure out how we visualize some of these tool calls. Like I was just talking about, what are we going to show in the chat in addition to the LLM's initial response? So if we have web search tool things happening, we can figure out how we're going to show those in the chat as well. In fact, I should just let it know that. I'd also like to figure out how to show the results or the tool, the web, what's it called? Web search and web fetch tool calls in the chat as they are happening. Great. All right, so it is working on that particular thing. What were we going to look at real quick? We were talking about tools. It might have been the tools thing, actually. Um, oh, we are going to need to, while this is happening, let me go ahead and switch off my screen and grab a new environment key or API key. And console.anthropic.com, and I'll get that into the .env, and then I'll switch back to showing my screen again in just a second here. Let me see. Where is our Claude code, our Claude agent? There we go. Here's a developer platform. API keys, create key. Give the key a name, copy the key, create an .env, name it Anthropic key, drop it in, save it. All right, great. Let me go back to all right, and we're back here. Okay, cool. Let's grab that API key and have that stored. Let's see. So what is Claude asking me now? We can show tool calls without changing the schema. Changing the schema. We shouldn't have anything to do with LiveStore at this point, really. Maybe it's thinking that, oh, I understand. Okay, so it's thinking that each tool call will be like a message that we insert into LiveStore and that we display in the overall chat. So like, for example, each of these are separate messages in LiveStore. That makes sense. It's totally fine to change the schema, but it's great that we can do it without it changing it. Let's see what it's recommending. So we'll detect tool use blocks in SDK assistant message content. We'll create a chat message like searching the web for your query. Commit it to LiveStore as an assistant message, and when the final text response comes, we'll commit that too. Yep, no schemas changes, tool calls persist. Alternative if you want live updates is add a tool status field to schema to track in progress tools. That would actually be pretty cool. Let's see. I'm fine with option 2. Let's just go with option one for now. Option one for now, but let's definitely do option two in a minute here. All right. Great. I think that's probably all the planning and that we should be able to go. Let's see. Cool. So it looks like it already hit the .env and found my key. I was just going to let it know that I'd grabbed one. It's also reading package JSON, so it's probably getting ready to install the Claude Agent SDK from npm. All right, there it goes. Cool. Okay. We have been going for about 30 minutes, so I'm going to take a break here in just a second, and this might be a good time to do that. Let me think about what other kind of things we want to learn here. Let's go run back to our architecture diagram and think about what we have going on here right now. So far we have built a simple Kanban application, and we have chat, which we ended up throwing chat over here on the right side. Mm. Anyway, chat's on the right, left side. I was going to drag it over there, but whatever. We've got chat. We've got our set of Kanban columns, and we have our LiveStore app that we can now pull up and make changes in. Pretty handy. And then we're just now adding the Claude Agent SDK. We have not set up tool calls into LiveStore. That's going to be through these in-process MCP servers. But we do have like a LiveStore database here right now. And then we're just starting to fire off these LLM API calls to the Claude API through this Claude Agent SDK. So that's getting installed right now. Don't know that there's anything else that we could be actively working on right now. Let's see. Uh, let's see here. Yeah, if you have any questions or like things you want me to explore, feel free to drop it in the chat. Testing. All right, so I think all of the things work. Let's jump over to Cursor real quick and take a look at our schema again and think about what are the tools that we'll want to provide. We have tasks, so we'll probably want to do like a create task, update task. We do have a delete, I believe. Yeah, here we go. Delete, that seems to work okay. So we'll want to do create, delete, update task. One question will be whether we want a generic update task that does also move between columns or provide an explicit tool for moving between columns. Always an interesting always an interesting thing to plan here for context engineering of like how do you structure your tools. Let's go see how we're doing. All right, great. Option one implemented. We installed the SDK, updated the schema, integrated it into chat, and updated the environment, renamed it. That's fine. All right, I don't know if it did a pm install. Looks like it did. Go ahead and run pm dev. Oh, did it start or not? Oh, 6,000. Okay. Oops. Localhost 6,000. Here we go. Oh, interesting. So one of the things we'll want to do is control the LiveStore session that we're connected to. So let me show you what I mean by that by opening the LiveStore DevTools. So you'll notice that these messages over here on the left are actually different messages than we had up just a second ago. And the reason for that is when we opened LiveStore just now, it connected to a session. I don't even know how it's connecting to like what session ID it is. Loading DevTools via browser extension. Oh, that's right. I need to update my browser extension here, but that's fine. We can load them up over here in this panel. So you can see this is the LiveStore connection that we have going on. We have a Kanban board store is the name of the session, and that connects us to that same session each time. And then that has a database that has all of the chats in it and that kind of thing. I don't think we have a clear reset all data. Let's see what happened. Yeah, that's not working right now. I'll have to let Johannes know that that's not working at the moment. All right. So what I've done in the past is expose the session ID up here and then give you the ability to type in like a new session ID, like test or something like that, which would load a new LiveStore app. So let's go ask Claude to implement that real quick. I'd like to be able to connect to different LiveStore sessions by putting /: session ID equals some session in the URL or appending. I'm sure it would figure that out on its own, but in the URL, can you implement that when we are starting the app? Look in the URL. Cool, that'll give us the ability to restart. I guess I can go ahead and test this call. It's a little strange that it already has chat messages here. These should not be, I don't think, in the Claude Agent SDK. We'll have to go look at the way that it implemented chat. All right, great. Here's a fresh one though. And we're in session ID test. Great. All right, let's give this a go. I'm going to pull up the console, see if we see any errors as we do this. Testing LLM usage, very boring message. Yeah, there we go. All right, pass this over to Claude Agent SDK. When sending a chat message in the LiveStore app, I'm seeing this error in the console. All right, while it's fixing that, we'll talk about testing real quick. When I'm using Claude Agent SDK not Claude Agent SDK, when I'm using Claude Code or any of these CLI development tools, it's super important to have a set of tests so that the agent can see whether it did the thing correctly or not. So in setting up this basic LiveStore app, I haven't set up any tests. So Claude Code, sorry, is kind of driving blind right now. Claude Agent SDK is a Node.js library. It can't run directly in the browser. Whoa. That makes so much more sense. Oh my gosh. Oh, dang. Okay. Well, remember what I was saying earlier about grep? And it's really confusing that grep is a possible tool that's listed here, as well as these other file system tools like bash and that kind of stuff. And that's because the Claude Agent SDK actually expects to be sitting on a file system, which means it expects to be running on Node.js. Well, there's some good and bad here. One, the good is that if you remember from our architecture diagram, the way that Work Squared currently works is it has a LiveStore server running on Node.js. So yeah, this is running in render. It's a Node.js application, and that's where our current agentic loop actually runs. So running the Claude Agent SDK there, not going to be an issue. The thing that I'm surprised about is this. It needs to spawn I'm not surprised. I'm surprised I didn't know this already. It's basically, how did I miss this? It didn't seem like it was in the documentation. It spawns the Claude CLI as a process and then accesses the file system, which gives it all of the goodness of file creation, grep, bash, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's like actually running on the file system. I need to think about like the implications of that. One of the things that got me thinking about this yesterday is that for those of you who've been paying attention to the whole world of, for those of you who are way too up to date on AI, there was a big event yesterday. It's called the OpenAI Developer Day. At the OpenAI Developer Day, they announced the Codex SDK. And I remember reading through the Codex SDK information yesterday because I was interested in comparing it to the Claude Agents SDK. So let's look at that real quick. because this is super relevant now. And come on, let's see, where's your documentation for it? GPT, coding. Oh my gosh, I never spend any time on there. Codex, SDK, OpenAI. All right. So the Codex SDK operates very similarly to the Claude Agents SDK, apparently, which I did not realize yesterday when I saw this. I was kind of befuddled, I guess. Um, so you can use Codex through the CLI, the IDE extension, or Codex Web. I've been using it through Codex Web. I've used the CLI a little bit. I don't use an IDE anymore other than Cursor. But anyway, I've used Codex and Cursor as well. That's not true. But the Codex SDK enables you to control Codex, basically to spin up the Codex CLI as part of your application. Here we go. Big letters. The library is intended to be used server side and requires at least Node.js v18. So this was really clear when I was reading the Codex SDK documentation that this was how it works. And as I was reading this yesterday, I was thinking, oh, it's really different than the Claude Agents SDK, because the Claude Agents SDK does not spin up a separate process with the CLI. Like they've somehow extracted the Claude Agents like agentic loop out of the CLI, and they've delivering that. But no, 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 no. It is actually doing well. Actually, we need to confirm this because this could be absolutely a hallucination. The Claude Agent SDK can't run because it needs to spawn the Claude Code CLI process. This is a really different model, and I don't know how I missed this when we spent an hour reading through the docs last time. So out of curiosity, Agent SDK, migrating the TypeScript, renamed, what's changed, Python package. I'm sure there's something obvious that I just read right by last time. Install the new package, dependencies. So far, seeing nothing about Node. In fact, it's not even found on this page. Okay, yeah, all right. Is it found on this one? Here we go. Okay, there's a tiny little sentence. For Node.js and web applications. What? What? Yeah, it is not clear that that's the way this works. Okay, whatever. Yeah, it seems like it probably does. So this is asking for the executable for Claude Code, presumably. I mean, this is what actually runs the CLI tool, I guess. Default from CLI. Yeah, I still find if anybody from Anthropic is watching this, it would be really helpful if you spelled it out a little more clearly how this thing actually works. So core concepts, full Claude Code feature support, sure, it has all these. I would expect it to have all these things. Nothing about this indicates to me that it's like running in Node.js. What the heck? Oh, hey, Mark. Just seeing a friend in the chat. Yeah, and I'll try to do a better job of glancing around there right now. I'm kind of like, what the heck? Claude Agent SDK does not do what I thought it would do. Hey, pre-time. How's it going, y'all? Okay, so the implications of what we just learned about the Claude Agent SDK, and this is why we do spikes, right? I could have just like barreled into integrating this into Work Squared, but instead, let's build a sample LiveStore application and see what it would be like to integrate the Claude Agent SDK. A couple implications. One, like I already referred to with the architecture diagram, we're not going to be able to get by with this simpler architecture. We're going to actually have to stand up two separate things. Um, we're going to actually have to stand up LiveStore running via the LiveStore node adapter in some remote server. We can run all this locally. I've already set this all up for Work Squared. So I'm going to pull this stuff over from Work Squared. We'll do it all locally. We don't have to deploy to like some external service. We'll run it locally, but we're going to have a like one LiveStore app running in Node.js, and we're going to have a LiveStore web application as well as a sync server between the two. So new architecture, to at least to our spike here, it looks like this. We have a LiveStore client app that's running through the LiveStore like React adapter, LiveStore provider, stuff that I showed at the very beginning of this. Mark agrees that I'm not crazy. It does not. It's not super clear in the docs. So one implication is we're going to have to make a slightly more complex architecture. Not a big deal. It's just going to take us a little bit longer to spike into this. Here's the other implication, which is actually much bigger. It's that the Claude Agent SDK, I had been thinking of it working in a certain way and had been kind of conceptualizing it. And the Codex SDK that launched yesterday from OpenAI is actually very similar to the two. So personally, I've been using Claude Code for a few months now, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic agentic loop. And so I'm still, my default is still the Claude Agent SDK. But last week when I started on this, I think on Thursday or Friday, um, I I had said there's really no competition yet for the Claude Agent SDK, but that's because I misunderstood what was going on. The Codex SDK should be pretty similar. The Google SDK that launched last week for Jules, I think it launched last week, for Jules should also be pretty similar. And there's rumblings of some new stuff happening with Google. If you've been paying attention to some of the stuff about Open Router and like strange new models and stuff like that. So very likely that there's going to be a new drop of a fantastic new model from Google that you'll be able to access via the Jules SDK. So there now are, in my opinion, multiple options for ways to implement this agentic loop, hand it off. I also like, I don't know why, but it feels weird to be running in a process, the Claude Agent CLI. I mean, I know it's all just code, and I know that, having it run on top of us, like inside the process of a node server is like not that different from running the like actual TypeScript stuff, but there's something about communication lines there and that kind of thing that just has me pondering. So the other thing we need to grapple with is that we're now going to have both a database that we're going to access via LiveStore, right? This is our LiveStore MySQL database. And we're also going to have a file system. And what the heck do we do with that? So granted, I could just disallow all the file system tools. Totally fine. But if you've been paying attention to any of the new context engineering work or the I think it was Cloudflare a couple weeks ago published an article about this, that agents work better when they can write code and write tools and like kind of have a computer to allow them to do work on. And so effectively with the Claude Agent SDK running on a Node.js server with access to the file system, with a set of file tools already built in, and the Claude Agent SDK, frankly, is extremely well optimized around using those tools. Maybe we should be giving all of our agents in the agentic environment like a computer that they're working on with like their own little file system. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think more about this for sure. Yeah, and if you're curious what I'm talking about when I'm talking about like agentic environments, like go check out Work Squared. This is the main like agent environment that I'm working on. And this is the reason why I'm evaluating Claude Agent SDK is to replace my own agentic loop, which is weak sauce agentic loop compared to what a Claude Agent and Codex and Jules and all these other CLI tools that are getting continuously improved could be. I think one of the other distinctions I'll probably have GPT-5 write a deep research report on this and hand it the documentation for all of the different agentic loops. But one other difference here is that the I believe the Codex CLI is actually open source, whereas the Claude Agent one is not. Something to consider in terms of like if you want to steer it. Not that I'm intending to make core contributions to the agentic loop. In fact, the whole point of this was to hand off the agentic loop to someone else, hand off things like memory management and compaction and tool usage and MCP integration and not have to iterate that myself. Okay, enough digesting kind of that recent learning. Let's take a step back and think about how we solve this. As Claude Agent SDK, or sorry, as Claude Code indicates here, we need to add a backend server. So we'll create a simple Node.js backend that runs the Claude Agent SDK, exposes an API endpoint for the front end to call, streams responses back to the browser. Not exactly. So the architecture options that it's presenting here are using streaming responses between, like creating a streaming connection between the LiveStore server and this front end client. And that would be one way to architect it, but that would not be the LiveStore way to architect it. So we actually need to use LiveStore as sort of the centerpiece here. So I'm going to actually say, okay, Claude Code. I've actually solved this problem already on a separate project. Here's the deal. All right, GitHub. Let's go pull up. Work squared. And let's see. Tom says, I recently started my bachelor's course in computer science. Any advice how I can start my coding journey? So much advice for you, Pratham, but probably not right at this minute. Yeah, you should reach out via email. I'd be happy to point you to some stuff. For a couple of years, I worked on an online coding boot camp where I helped people learn how to code. It's very, very fun. Okay, so architecture, I have an architecture document here in Work Squared that lays out how these different systems work together. So I'm going to give this, um, here's the architecture I would like. You can actually look at the code here. So we'll give it, point it to packages server. Essentially, we want to use LiveStore as the integration between server and client. Server should watch for chat messages and dispatch to Claude Agent SDK. All right, think really hard. Let me see. And propose a simple architectural plan that will allow us to spike into Claude Agent SDK and see if we want to integrate it into Work Squared. Let me see. I'll leave it in bypass permissions mode. What was it? Tab, thinking on. Yeah, I think that should do it. Ah, all right. Well, major revelation. Happy to have the revelation about it. And then, yeah, there is some interesting, let's see, ramifications here. We've already talked about the files, the tools. I kind of want to go back and look through while Claude Code is doing this, and we should be able, I'm pretty sure I'll be able to set Claude Code off on building this server and standing the two things up pretty quickly because there's a reference example that it can pull from in Work Squared. So I'm not really worried about getting that stood up here in the next few minutes for us to test. But I do want to kind of go back through the Agent SDK documentation and reconsider it in light of the fact that it is an in-process tool that's running effectively on top of the file system, and kind of think through what each one of these different features might mean in that world. Um, so a lot of this, I think, will probably start to make more sense. Permissions, these permission tooling, this is all kind of the same that I would have expected. Let's see. Yeah, just mapping all of this stuff onto you're actually driving the CLI makes a ton of sense. now, especially since all of these things are so, one-to-one in Claude Code. I'm glad I have so much experience using Claude Code because like all of these things now make perfect sense of how you might put it in modes like this, bypass permissions mode, which you might have noticed I'm running in bypass permissions mode pretty much all the time when I'm using Claude Code. I don't have any kind of like advanced container setup. That is something that I'd like to get configured at some point, but just rolling with it for now. And yeah, all of this kind of makes sense. System prompts, I'll want to understand more about that because that's the main way we're going to be controlling the Eesh. Of course, we have to use Claude.md. Provide specific project-specific context and instructions. Yeah, I like integrating the Claude Agent SDK when you're not running like a file system-based application is gonna be interesting. The SDK only reads these when you explicitly configure setting sources. Yeah, we won't need to use the Claude MD SDK. Oh, it's Chad Fowler. What's up, Chad? Mini Ruby reunion here. It's awesome. All right. Okay, so let's see what Claude Code has come up with here. Nice. Here's the architecture pattern, what we're learning from. So LiveStore is the integration layer. Yes, LiveStore is the integration layer. Thank you for deducing that properly. Client commits user messages as events. Yep. The server will watch LiveStore for new user messages coming in. That's right. The server will process via AI, that agentic loop, a custom agentic loop in our case. That's right. But we're going to use the Claude Agent SDK. That's what makes this different. And the client reactively displays updates. Yeah. All right. So our spike architecture here is we really want to test if the Claude Agent SDK can replace the custom agentic loop. You're on it. Great. So the browser will commit a user message to LiveStore. Actually, this is the LiveStore sync server. So I might need to give it some directions here. This is not technically true that so LiveStore OPFS is actually running inside of this browser here. And then also there will be a LiveStore file system, LiveStore running a database stored on the file system that'll be running inside the node server. So it's has misunderstood the architecture just slightly. So we'll need to correct that, which is why we ask it to write plans so that we can we can see where it's confused. So what we'll build, the minimal spike is a server, connects to LiveStore as a client, subscribes to the chat messages, calls the agent SDK, says there's no need for message queue, process, yep, rate limiting, multiple store, health endpoints, that's right, yep. And then the client changes, we'll remove the direct SDK call, and we'll commit user messages to LiveStore, which is already working, and query and display all messages. Yeah, this will just kind of, the client won't change much. Exactly, it's already mostly done. The schema is already done. There's no new events to add. So the one thing it's missing is that you need a sync server running that both the client and the server can connect to. If Johannes was here, he could correct me if there's a simpler or more direct way, but I think that is the way. So implementation plan, add the basic server, which connects to LiveStore. Same store as browser. Yeah, you're going to have to connect through that sync server. And then SDK integration. Great. Okay. The only thing you're missing is the client and server have to connect to a sync server. That's this guy right here. The sync server has all the events in it. Sync server to fetch the events. And I'm going to give it an example of our work squared sync server. So here we go. Or no, not that. It's called worker. I should totally change the name of this thing. See this example. Something quite simple. I'm also going to give it the LiveStore docs just in case. Boop. If you get confused. Oh, and we talked about this last time. Make sure if you're on the LiveStore docs that you're up here on the dev version. You can get to those also through dev.docs.livestore.dev, and that puts us at dev.10. 040 for LiveStore is coming out in the next few weeks for sure, maybe even this week. Well, actually, Johannes is at a conference, unlikely to come out this week, probably next week. So make sure you're using 040. There's a lot of improvements to for over 031, which is the latest 03 branch. If you get confused about LiveStore usage, luckily I've already updated work squared. I think it's on 048 or 047, or I'm sorry, what is it? I'm dev 10, dev 7 or dev 8. So there shouldn't be a lot of, if it follows that pattern, there shouldn't be a lot of difference between dev 10 and dev 8, I guess is what I'm on. Here are the LiveStore docs. I'm going to explicitly make sure you're using the 040 dev versions of LiveStore, just so it doesn't get confused. Please update architecture plan. Man, I have to say, while Claude Code is writing this, having an AI write your architecture plan after you've had a conversation about it, and then editing that, having the AI do the edits and all that kind of stuff, it has made my life. It made me able to move so much faster in this space. If you're looking at want some examples of what some of that can look like, you could actually go into Work Squared, and in the Docs folder, there's both a set of plans, which has a lot of architectural conversations, all that kind of stuff. There is an architecture document that I have AI keep up to date, and then I use architecture decision records to document main primary decisions that we're making. In fact, there's an outstanding ADR 008 right now, which is a custom agentic loop, or like handing off the agentic loop. And yeah, these are documents that the agent writes with my input, and we go back and forth. We talk about different pros and cons, different ways that we could approach it, and then sign off on it. And that document writing used to take a lot of time. All right, it looks like he's trying to get to the examples, so let me give it some help here. LiveStore, they're actually under the repo. They're not under the docs, as far as I know. So let's see if it found them. It doesn't look like it did. Yeah, still failing to find the documents there. And yeah, the example that is most appropriate is one of these sync CF. So a couple things about LiveStore while we're waiting for good old Claude Code to get its act together here. You can use LiveStore in single player mode, which is what we've been doing so far, and it has been storing its event queue locally. So we've got this Kanban application. We have a, should we put these things side by side so you can see them? We've got the dev tools over here on the right, and you can see that when I'm creating events, let's go ahead and put it on events here. When I'm creating events, new task, that appears as an event here. But if I go over to the sync settings right here, I am not connected to a sync server. So I'm basically just sending all these events internally inside of like one instance of LiveStore and materializing those into rows in the database. So you can see this is getting materialized into a task, which is right there. There's new task. But in order to really take advantage of LiveStore in multiplayer mode, and certainly, as we just learned, in order to use the Claude Agent SDK, you're actually going to need multiple instances of LiveStore, and those have to be running through a single sync server. And then the sync servers actually just have the events on them, and transmit those to all the different clients. There's several different ways that you can connect clients to the sync server. Right now, there's the web LiveStore interface that we're using. I can't remember what that LiveStore adapter is called for some reason. There's also the Node LiveStore adapter that we're going to be using on the Node system. There's a new one in 040 that's a like Cloudflare worker specific adapter, because Cloudflare workers are a little bit different. They're not a web environment. They're not a full node environment. They're like this short-lived, kind of serverless function environment, and so they have some different capabilities. And so there's a specific LiveStore adapter that allows you to quickly spin up one of those, connect to the SQLite database that's associated with that client, and then do some things, and then the worker can go away. So these kind of like short-lived LiveStore workers are pretty cool. All right, how are we doing here? Looks like it's reading through the examples. Yeah, and my experience of working with Claude Code here is that it can pretty easily one-shot this, but it is, like I mentioned, a more complex architecture than having a single no sync server involved LiveStore instance running. Let's see, what can we be productively doing? Oh, looks like it's ready to go. Let's make sure, and then I can hit like go and get it to build. I never understand the full architecture. The sync server, yes. It's a Cloudflare worker, has a durable object, plus D1 to persist it. That is correct. Relays events. Node server will receive events. We'll call Claude SDK. Okay, I think we're on the same page now. Sync server is on Cloudflare Worker, but you can run it locally. Totally. WebSocket endpoints for clients. Yes, we're going to use WebSocket. By the way, there's in LiveStore 0.4, there are other mechanisms for exchanging messages than just WebSockets. We're going to go with WebSockets because that's what I'm using on Work Squared. But there's, I think, HTTP and SSE or RPC. I can't remember what the other messaging mechanism is for in 0.4. Yep, we'll run it locally with Wrangler Dev. All this looks good. Browser client already mostly done. Node server is going to be brand new, but it's going to hit the local sync server. Yeah, all this should be good. There's many examples of this on the in the LiveStore repo here. So all this looks good. Simplified components. Yeah. Phase one. I hate when it gives me time frames like this. It's so silly. Really? Is it really going to take you 30 minutes to do this, Claude Code? And another 15 minutes? And another hour? And another hour? What? Why? All right, yeah. But I do find it helpful that it divides it into phases because we can check in and make sure that things are working at the end of each phase. All right, so go for phase one. And then let's check in and make sure we are connected from web. All right. Again, this shouldn't take super long. The sync servers are actually very simple, especially this kind of sync server. It's basically going to be a single file that we're going to create for the LiveStore app, and then we'll be able to sync our web application to it. And what the main way we'll know that it's working is we will see, well, one, we'll have to be running the sync server from the command line. And so we'll see two things in our Vite when we start up here. pnpm dev will start both a web application and start the worker, and will give us some like output from the worker in the console. The other way we'll know that it's working is this interface here. On the right is the LiveStore dev tools. We'll be able to see this. We'll say connected, and we'll see that we're connected to a sync server here in a second. So all pretty cool. Like if you haven't used LiveStore, I highly recommend checking it out. It's been a pretty powerful way to build multiplayer applications in this like structured event sourcing kind of way. Chad says, I like when it plans out weeks in advance. Yes, I have definitely had that happen before where Claude will say, week one, I'm going to be building this. Then week two, I'm going to be building this. Yeah, I think I have in my Claude.md for Work Squared, but not my general Claude.md. Like omit all time frames. The only thing that matters is the priority order in which you do things. It does not matter how long they will take. And that has been pretty effective at getting it to leave that out. Let's see. Version. All right, so it's iterating along here. Keep these up. Okay, we've been going for a little over an hour now. Not surprised to see this breaking for a second while Claude is actively making changes. Quick check-in on, you're absolutely right. Oh my gosh, Mark, that kills me. Kills me. So one of my favorite features, I've been using this thing called Conductor. I highly recommend it. It lets you run like multiple Claude codes simultaneously. So this is one of my favorite features. Check this out. I'm not absolutely right. Thank you very much. Strip all you're absolutely right from AI messages. Notice I have that enabled. Oh man, yeah, because I do not need to hear that all the time. Actually, it's really interesting. Like Claude does that pretty aggressively, as you know, Mark's making the joke here, but I actually have a pretty nice prompt in ChatGPT it's far more aggressive and kind of cynical and consider additional options and point out things that I may not have thought of and like challenge me. And ChatGPT is much more willing to do that with that prompt than Anthropic is. All right, here we go. Phase one's ready to go. Not surprised. Let's go. Let's restart PMPM dev and let's get over to our app here and we should now be hopefully connecting. Failed to resolve import. This file exists. Let's see. This is probably going to get to be where my lack of testing is going to make it hard for Claude Code to be super effective here. Seeing this error when hitting localhost 60,000. And that actually might be the answer right there of what we could have another Claude doing productively here. Um, and we've been working on the same branch for the main branch for a while now. So we may need to, actually, let me add to .getignore the .env file. Add .env. All right. Claude is still fixing. Let's see if it succeeded. So as I mentioned a second ago, one thing that's absolutely key when you're working with these coding agents is that you have some way to give the agent the ability to find out whether it broke something, whether it's actually working, all that kind of stuff. On my Work Squared application, I have both storybook tests and playwright tests for end-to-end testing so that the agent can find out whether it has actually broken anything and kind of fix it on its own. All right, let me try a quick npm dev restart. Yeah. All right. There we go. Yeah, Mark says, I think Codex is generally smarter than Claude Code, but Claude Code is so much faster that I default to it and switch over when I get frustrated with Claude and need to break through a wall. And when even that doesn't work, AMP Code is even better, but can get expensive very fast. I have not tried AMP Code. I should definitely give that a try. Yeah, I agree. Codex is like surprisingly slow. So one of the ways that I've found myself using Codex, if you have a ChatGPT subscription, you already have access to Codex, and surprisingly permissive limitations here. So I've actually I'll often like fire off a few things in Codex. I think I have an example here. I'll do things where I just literally point it to a GitHub issue. Does it have this one? No, I took a plan and copy pasted it in here for that one. But I'll actually just literally say this GitHub issue, go, and have the Codex do the whole thing. I haven't done a whole lot of work to make sure that I'm setting up Codex properly, but like setting up the full environment where it has access to the tests, all that kind of stuff. So it is kind of like it is sort of flying blind, but you're right, Mark. It does more often like successfully get that done. And I'm actually really curious with the release of Codex GPT-5 Codex yesterday and GPT-5 Pro and some of the other models. They're claiming longer like planning and execution horizons than the sort of 5 to 20 minute horizons that we're currently operating on. So I'll be very curious to see how that works. And again, I'm watching to see what, let's see, what are you saying? Fixes in place. Client is using /client. Um, Try it yourself, yo. No, I don't want to test it myself. I want you to figure it out if you can. Um, I didn't want to have to set up testing for a spike, but given that I'm having the agent write most of the code, I'll probably have to have the agent also set up testing. Um, so that is a little frustrating, but not at all surprising given the experience I've had working with these things. Let's see. Cool. Okay, great. It's found a way. It has found a way without me giving it any tests to test it out itself. I love the creativity of these things that like with a small set of tools, like ideally it would actually have, storybook or playwright tests or whatever. But no, it's just gonna like figure out a way to either curl the website or, run it locally and watch the bash output. So you notice that it has two background tasks right now, which is really nice that so I'll run bashes real quick and it kind of shows you um, it's interesting. The slash command can't run while it's running. Creating custom slash. Oh, that's a tip. Never mind. Yeah, so it's actually running the server in the background. I was thinking slash bashes would give us a quick output of that, but apparently it doesn't run exactly like that. Both servers are running successfully, so it says. Let's find out. Did you successfully fix it or not? No, no errors on start here. And still seeing this in the console. Yeah, it might be maybe the problem that I tried to run it myself. Maybe I should kill my own server because it may be running its own version of the server and we got it running twice. That could be it. Could also be running at 6001. No. Did it tell me 6001? It did. So I wasn't even hitting the right one just now. Whoops. All right. Let it finish whatever it's doing here. All right. It says I can hit 6000 now. I don't need to start the server myself. Yep, we're definitely going to have to set up testing here. Let's see. Let's go ahead and move over to a branch. Checkout dash B. This is going to be LiveStore integration and add this. This is also a little bit different than the way I normally work. I would actually normally have Claude Code do all the commits and create a PR and come back to me once it has a PR. But because we're kind of doing this spike, it's a little bit more like pairing with the AI as opposed to straight up delegation, which most of my work these days is actually straight up delegation, and I'm not doing this kind of close work, so to speak. Fish origin. Boop, boop, doo. All right. Here we go. Now we're back. Way to push through, Claude. All right, let's see. Do we have a sync server? We are not connected to a sync server yet. Let's see. No sync backend found. Let's see. The correct export is make.wssync. I'm pretty sure make.wssync is 031. Let's see. It might be pulling in the wrong version of LiveStore, which would be, or pulling in different versions across the worker. Let's see. 040dev9. Okay, that's hopeful. Source here. Package. 040 dev 9. All right, that's good. Let's see. All right, well, it's running 040, so I'm gonna roll with it. But the browser is still not connected to the sync server. Actually, let me see what happens when I create an event here. Or like, actually, let's go to a new store ID, session ID. Oh, I usually use the word store ID. Anyway, test one, that should create a new one here. Add a task, test. Pull this up over here on the right. Still disconnected. There's the database. All right, all this looks fine. And if I come over, it works, and I can create events. Server isn't seeing them. Make sure the sync server logs all events that it sees. And I really would like to stop these background tasks. Would be kind of, this is one area where sometimes, there are times where having a CLI and not having a proper IDE is a little frustrating. Like I should be able to pull these background tasks up and like kill them right now. And so that I could get things running there. Okay, great. We added some output to the worker that'll allow us to see whether things are connecting or not. Because I can see this browser tools, but the Claude Code can't, and it's also much easier to just see it in the command line. Let's see. Man. Well, this is the whole point of a spike, but I gotta admit it is a little bit of a bummer that I'm having to do a slightly larger, more complex architecture just to test out the Claude Agent SDK. But this is the architecture we're running on Work Squared, so it's not wasted time. But it is a little frustrating. All right. Can I check my browser tab? Yes, I can. All right. Console. Let's see. Not seeing. Yeah, still not connected. Let's suggest a client. DevTools says I'm not connected. Just ran the app and created some tasks. Did you see them in the sync server output? I'm actually kind of curious curious to go look at the code now to make sure that there's not anything that I see that's obvious that it's doing. Make worker. Let's see. So app.tsx should have what we want here. Make WS sync, invite sync URL in .env. Let me hide my screen real quick and open .env. There is the Vite sync URL, or Vite sync URL, however you pronounce it. Localhost 8787, that's what we want to see. Okay. So app.tsx should be connecting successfully. Does the LiveStore worker need to be configured? Seems pretty minimal. So there's a LiveStore worker that runs on the website of things that connects to the sync server. That's what this LiveStore worker is here. There's the adapter I was mentioning earlier. So LiveStore is running in this, using this web adapter. It has a worker that is basically internally kind of managing the event store, which is a pretty nice model. The worker sync needs configuration too. I think it was pulling in an old example, honestly. Mm-hmm. All right, let's see. Back over here, refresh. I don't expect to see it working yet, but I'll give it a second. Yeah, it's straight up telling me WebSocket connections are not working, but at least it's trying to make WebSocket connections, which is a step in the right direction. Um, Alrighty, I'm now seeing the web work app is trying to connect via WebSockets and failing. That's good. Let me actually, I think I can shortcut this whole process by giving it direct links to the files that it needs in my work squared. So if I go to web, there should be a LiveStore worker in here, probably in source. There it is, LiveStore worker.ts. Here's the pattern you need to follow. Worker, web workers here. Back to packages. This is my sync worker. Again, like I mentioned, I need to rename this, but and it's in functions. More complex than necessary. And this actually reminds me of a problem I was running into with LiveStore a couple of weeks ago. And that might be the reason why this is failing. Okay, so I've got a web worker, I've got the sync server. Those two things need just the web. Okay, cool. The only other thing I could think of would be that might be helpful is the app TSX for, or the root TSX is what I call it here. And then here is TSX shows what should be in app TSX. All right. Ignore your previous LiveStore setup code. All right. Hopefully with those three files, we can get this thing working and off the ground. And then we'll have the additional challenge of getting the server up and running using the node adapter and connecting as well. So hopefully that gives us what we need. One thing I haven't done a lot though is try codecs um, with the LiveStore app. I know that Johannes has been using, he switched from Claude Code to codecs a few weeks ago and has been using that almost exclusively with um, with LiveStore apps and has found it to be quite good. So there's definitely something to be said for digging into codecs and seeing if it could solve some of this stuff. Although Sonnet 4.5 came out, what, last Thursday? And so maybe the world has changed again and Sonnet 4.5 is actually better than codecs. I don't know. All right. Cool. So it's pulling some things in. We've got about 30 minutes left in this LiveStore, so I'm really hoping to get this up and running in the next few minutes and then get the server up and running. Um, and what I'll probably also do is fire off a couple of background tasks to at the end of this episode to get codecs to set up testing with Playwright, and that way we can actually give the agent some eyes as it's working on this integration here. Hmm. It kind of drives me crazy that I can't see like, does Control R still do it? No, not even a thing anymore in Claude Code. Kind of drives me crazy that I can't see the output from the different servers. Um, oh, Control R is search these days. It used to be like show all. Oh, what does that do? Interesting. I could actually hit, yeah, down, down. Hmm. All right. Worker starting, it says, let's see. All right, I'm not seeing any, uh, oh, there's a WebSocket connection failure. Dadgummit. All right, kill your background tasks. I'm gonna have to try and start this thing myself. Claude, you let me down today. Feeling sad. All right, great. pnpm dev. All right, so clearly that doesn't start the whole thing. What is the command to start the worker or the sync worker? Let's see, package JSON. pnpm dev is just going to start one, so I guess I have to SSA or cd into the directory and then okay. So cd, what's it called? Worker. pnpm dev there. Let's see if that even successfully starts up. I would expect it to, but it clearly is throwing problems. All right. Errors when it starts up. Yeah, Mark, you were saying you can get to the background task output through slash bashes. The thing I was surprised about is I would like to be able to do that right now while it's doing other things, but when I hit put slash bashes in, I have to like wait for it to complete. And it seemed to when I did this before, it seemed to interrupt the current process, which is pretty unusual Claude code. Usually Claude like keeps going and integrates what you're saying into it. So yeah, this is where I was saying like it would feel nice to have an IDE here and be able to actually see um, those two things concurrently. But they've done incredible work here to make Claude Code feel really great without having the affordances of an IDE where you have like multiple windows and that kind of thing. Um, looks like we're getting close to auto compaction. Mm, yes, you should be allowing all the connections. I don't know. That's a good question. Whether I need the durable object to back. So I think the durable object is the backend for the worker, where it actually stores the events. So that would be like here. This guy has. I think this is a direct durable object, um, and so that probably is needed. And I think it can be run locally through Wrangler, but I'm not certain. Yeah, it says the DO is needed internally by LiveStore, but we should need to configure it explicitly. All right, let's see. Seeing WebSocket connection failures. Kill your bashes. Yeah, I am running out of faith in Claude Code and patience. Npm dev, starting local server. Yeah, this is starting on localhost 52298. It's not even the right port. And it doesn't seem to be completing either. Starting local server. Sync via backend DO. All right, so all the background tasks are stopped. Let me see if it was me being hasty. Starting the local server. Okay, it's starting on 8787 this time. What in the world? Failed dependency. Actually, it probably needs the Wrangler setup. That's probably the key here that we've been missing. Let's see. So the background worker, work squared, packages, worker, Wrangler. I bet that's it. There we go. The durable object binding. Ah, oh, it's looking for it as the TOML file, but we have it as JSON-C instead. Dang, I don't have a TOML file here. Oh, it's weird. Okay, I see. Locally, we've been doing it in TOML. Okay, I think this will do it. So that should set up the direct object that the WebSocket worker will need in order to connect to the the sync worker and store the events in a durable object, which then should allow them to transmit. Why we were not getting like WebSocket connection errors still is a little bit concerning. I'll go ahead and shut this down. All right. Because I would have expected there to be errors, but maybe it's just straight up failing to start, and that's the problem. Um, okay, the reason it changed to port 8787 is I was already running on port 8787, but it's fine that it specifies the port here. Let's see. All right, so it should compaction. Um, I would love see this is what I meant by like I can't kill bashes right now in the middle of compaction. Die. I want to kill them so that I can actually run it myself. I'm gonna run it myself anyway. Okay, it's gonna tell me sync backend. It's the following bindings. X to exit. Um, Install. Man, thing has been having some trouble. Let's go ahead and update the most recent version of Wrangler while we're waiting for compaction to complete. So yeah, I'm thinking I've got 20 minutes left on this spike. I think what the most useful thing to do with the remaining 20 minutes would be to delegate several tasks to some async agents to go off and try some things and then come back. So one we've already talked about would be setting up testing so that the agent can iterate on the iterate via like Playwright. And I'm thinking probably a combination of Vite in React, Vite tests in React, and a Playwright setup. I just did some work to get Playwright set up in with LiveStore on Work Squared, so I could definitely point the worker at that work and say get Playwright set up and get a simple Vite test suite. Those seem like they would be useful. Let me hop over to, I think I had a Work Squared. Main. Ah, there it is. Yeah, cool. Claude Agent SDK SDR. That's right. Sure. Great. All right, so this is notes from last time. Let's see. Work streams to delegate. Create a test suite with Vite tests for React components and Playwright tests for end-to-end testing. Here's an example test suite, and that will, yeah, work squared. I'll give it an example of that in a second. What other work streams could we delegate here? So we need to get the server set up and running. Get the server set up and syncing with the LiveStore sync server. And while that's still running, so once we have the client, the sync server, and the server set up and running, then the next thing will be getting the Claude Agent SDK running on the sync server. So unfortunately, these two things are sequential. So get the server set up and running, and then I guess one thing we could look at as a parallel work stream, that the output of which would be super interesting, is just go ahead and have the server, or go ahead and have an agent try to generate the in-process MCP wrapper around LiveStore. We won't be able to test those out until we get a fully working setup, but it would be interesting to see how it structures that. So in setup an in-process MCP server for the LiveStore events queries that works with the Claude Agent SDK. Let's see. Watching for messages. Send to Claude Agent SDK for processing. Output tool usage as a chat message. All right, so I think this looks good. We've got testing. We have server, and we've got the MCP, a LiveStore MCP set up. I think those are the main work streams. Looks like Claude code is still flailing. The 424 error is resolved. Yay! There's a new error. Oh goodness. Yeah. At some point I need to stop. Let's see. So Claude Agent SD or Claude Code got lost when it tried to add the worker. So what I might try to do, per Mark's comment, I might try to hand this over to Codex and point it at the working example of work squared and say, hey, add it, set up a setup with the web worker, the sync worker, and the server, and get it working. That would be, so maybe this is a Codex task. CLI or web will be a question. CLI has a lot more tools at its disposal in terms of running the tests successfully and that kind of thing. So maybe I'll try that. The LiveStore MCP setup I can probably hand over to Claude. Claude code. via conductor running on a separate work stream or get work stream, work tree. Sorry, get work tree. And this is also Claude code via conductor. All right. Are you still flailing? Made a mess. I could not agree more. Thank you for being so humble. Oh my gosh. Discovered a new issue. LiveStore requires this for the event log and a durable object for context storage. Okay. Okay. Like what are you doing next? What do you need to? Did you do it or what? I wonder if it got to like max iterations here, and this is a max iterations message of like, I was doing all this stuff and I'm confused. And yeah, what a mess you have made of things, Claude. I totally agree. I'll give it a second here and open up conductor. And let's see, add a new project. LiveStore. Where's the new one here? There we go. Open that up. Ah, all right. We're on an isolated branch. We'll want to get this checked in. Sync backend is now working. I very much doubt that that is true, but we will try. All right. Oh, okay. Yeah, everything looks normal here. Connected. Whoa. Hey, yo. Are we actually connected? Really? Add task. Testing. This red green thing looks strange. Doesn't give me a ton of confidence. Are you seeing log messages? Well, I guess maybe I can do this myself now. Bashes, maybe? Yes. Holy smokes. 2 active shells. Yeah, yeah. I want maybe this one? Nope. Interesting. Slash bashes. That. Showing last 10 lines. So if I do some more stuff, does it show more? Best. This. It feels weird here. Like the green, yellow, green thing is strange. There's the sync backend though. So I think we might actually be connected. Or these little streaks of red feel weird. Okay, here we go. One event stored, test one. Okay, cool. So it looks like we at least have the sync server and the web working. This is a good point for a check-in. And let's get back to this mode of, okay, web and sync server are working. Commit and open a PR. And then we can do a quick PR review on that. We got 10 minutes left here, so my goal is gonna be to fire off those different background tasks before we quit, and then I can come back around to those hopefully completed PRs. Know that conductor, I've used the codex CLI. Let's see. Yes, allow codecs to work in this thing. Let's see. All right. Oh, that's right. I don't have a Claude or agents .md here. I'm already using Codex High. All right, we might just do that one via CLI and see how things go. All right, first PR is created. I think I have Cursor BugBot set up for this. I'm not seeing it. Let's see. I need to go set that up, turn it on. Let's see. Switch to this for a second. I'm trying to remember where I configured that. Cursor.com? Yeah. And I don't know if anybody's using BugBot, but I found it to be pretty useful. Useful enough to pay for. With GitHub. Actually, I don't think there's anything private here on this. Let's see. BugBot. And here we go. 8 repositories. Oh wait, I need it configured under Jess. Oh, that's probably why, because this is a new repository. GHI, there we go. Turn it on. Sweet. All right, so now if I go over to here, should be able to, I think, say like at cursor maybe? Can't remember exactly which one it is. It'll react with like a little eyeball, like once it's seen it. Um, let's see. Cursor.com, BugBot. Oh my gosh. What the heck is that? There we go. There was a thing on here. Here, BugBot run. There it is. Okay. BugBot run. And then I should. Ah, there we go. Cool. Now it saw it. All right. Sweet. So let's get this merged in. And let's see. The warning about incoming change refers to temporary. Yeah, let's add those to get ignore. And push. All right. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes. Let's get these things started up. So I'll you to add. Actually, I really want to get this merged in first. Adds a Cloudware worker. Here's the summary that BugBot adds. Reviewed your changes, found no bugs. Great. Merging. Great. Let me archive this. Click new workspace. Oh wait. Archive. Do a git pull real quick. Oh, I'm in WorkSquared main. CD LiveStore. What? Not changes not staged for commit. Yes, that's correct. I thought I just added those to git ignore. Worker.wrangler. Are they in? Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. Git reset. Unstaged changes. It should just be straight up ignored. I don't know. Git reset. Git ignore. Git reset hard. Whatever. All right. There we go. Okay. So now I've got the most recent stuff. I can create a new workspace here and say, let's just grab our comments from this. Over to conductor, create an test suite here. Here's an example test suite. And I have an example over here on work squared. Pull requests. Oh, that's for Storybook. Okay, I can just go straight to end to end. Here we go. Nope. Packages, web, end to end. Here we go. Conductor. Great. Sonnet. Just do auto. Create a PR. Great. All right, there's another workspace. What was our other thing? Cursor. LiveStore MCP. Yeah, here we go. All right. Set up an end process like the LiveStore event. Work the Claude Agent SDK. Create a PR for this work. The only reason I'm having to say create a PR for this work is I don't already have a Claude.md in this directory that has the right information in it. And then finally, we'll get the Codex CLI working as well. I'll do this one in a branch. Okay, and I'll grab that from work squared, packages, server. All right. All right. Oh, create a PR when you are done. All right, great. So we have 3 different work streams happening with 2 Claude code agents running through Conductor and 1 Codex agent running via the CLI locally. Whew, okay, 1 minute left. Oh, man. So I know I said at the beginning of this Coding with Jess that I normally take breaks every 25 minutes for 5 minutes, but I decided to work for 2 hours straight just now, trying to solve this problem. Thanks for hanging out as long as you did for those folks who hung around. Really enjoyable to have folks chatting in the chat and watching along as we're doing this. Again, the goal of this was to evaluate the Claude Agents SDK in a LiveStore application and see how we could expose LiveStore to the Claude Agent SDK through these in-process MCP servers, or like tool calls. Could we turn LiveStore, instrumenting LiveStore into a set of tool calls that the agent could use? And the goal of that is replace the custom agentic loop that we have in Work Squared with potentially Claude Agent SDK that managing that agentic loop. Learned a bunch of things today. It was not as satisfying in terms of getting to play with the Claude Agent SDK, because a lot of the time was spent set up, and then also kind of that revelation in the middle of the session of realizing that it's just wrapping the CLI tool and needs to run a node environment and can't run in a web environment. But anyway, so there will be a part 3 of this. I'll probably record it later this week or live stream it later this week because I'm eager to get the agentic loop in Work Squared in a better place, especially with the promise of MCP integration. So anyway, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time on Coding with Jess.